Hello. I'm doing what I'm started to do yearly report. And this year it's been 7 years off the psychiatric medication cocktail that I came off of after about 25 years. Today is February 12th. My anniversary was February 9th. I didn't feel well that day, so it's happening today instead. It's a beautiful February 12th morning, and I decided to do this outside because there wasn't enough light inside yet. It's early, and perhaps you can hear the birds singing. It's quite lovely. Anyway, I wrote some notes, and I'm going to read some, and then I'm going to speak some and see how that goes. I'm still a little bit new at doing these videos. So I want to talk to those of us who've been labeled by psychiatry, all of us, but specifically those of us with labels that get that have to do with what is called psychosis, because we are particularly sensitive and particularly injured in ways that others are not. Because we're injured in really profound ways when we come to psychiatry. And then psychiatry and the drugs tend to ingrain those injuries much, much more deeply into the neural networks, and it becomes that much more difficult to recover. And I want to speak to that because we need to stop hurting people. So, to begin with, those of us with these kind of splits in our psyche, those of us who get labeled psychotic tend to have splits in our psyche as a result of trauma or simple sensitivity to the trauma that goes on in the world. We feel a lot. So we need recognition as children to be given the support to become who we are and to heal as well. Both, they're the same. To become who we are and to heal is the same thing. In tribal cultures, this is done early in children's lives. Those sensitive souls are recognized, and when they're 12 or so, they are brought into an initiation process with the shaman or the medicine man or the medicine woman. And they are initiated in a systematic and methodological way, also ritualized, so that a deep and profound healing happens and a deep and profound acceptance of the nature of who and what we are also happens. We're sensitive. We're not the same as everybody else. And we need that recognition, that respect, and that support. Pretty much from everybody, but since we don't get it from society, we need to give it to each other. And that is what my work is largely about, creating systems of recognition and support of one another. Because once we are given the space to heal, we can become what we are as members of the human race. We are alchemists, healers, transmuters of pain and ugliness. We feel. Stigma is created by the very system that purports to fight it, labeling us sick, deficient, broken, unredeemable, and unable to heal, and thus dosing us up with crippling neurotoxins is essentially a system of gross delusion and denial. Yes, psychiatry and psychology as practiced upon those of us who get labeled psychotic is a system of gross delusion and denial. It's not us that's the problem. We are a manifestation of society's problem. We are part of society. They truly do not know what they are doing. So it is upon us to find ourselves and thus support one another. We can't do it alone. But the paradox, too, is that only we can do it for ourselves. So, since perhaps we won't find professionals, it is upon us to help find one another and support one another and give this healing support and recognition to one another. I also want to speak to the fact that we are not special. We are simply constructed in a particular way, like every human being. Every human being has a role in the human race. Every human being, if allowed to blossom to their full potential, has a special place in the family of humanity. We are, in essence, a cog in the machine. We have special roles, but we are not special in terms of being superior. And the more we come to understand our role, our natural role, the more we see that all human beings are made equal and that we simply have a role. And right now, what's happening is that those of us with these labels are being cut off from humanity. We are not being allowed to perform our role. We are not included in the family. And yes, we are split off. We feel this splitting off. It again makes even more injury and harm. But if we recognize that that's what's happening, and then we recognize each other, we can lift each other up above this this denial from everybody else. So there's a tendency when we are dismissed by society to either flip into inferiority complex, believe that we're sick, we're broken, or alternatively, it often flips the other way. People become grandiose and think that we're special. So I like to suggest that we not attach either to the grandiosity or the inferiority. We may feel those things, and we can acknowledge and feel them in our bodies and watch them and feel them. This is part of healing. And as we watch and feel and allow, but perhaps, try to avoid acting either way, but we watch, we allow, perhaps sometimes we do act in ways that are less than flattering. The more we come to watch and feel and allow, we come into equilibrium. And when the deeper where this happens, the more we allow both sides of the pole, we come into equilibrium, and then we come into a deep understanding of the egalitarian nature of all human beings. And so I want to say something about finding support, because certainly a lot of us feel like we haven't found any support anywhere. And I still feel that way quite often, because my process is intense and unique, and there's not a lot of recognition. I get recognition from you guys that listen and read me. And I get it from some of my friends. Anyway, if this makes sense to you, really the only job to do is that the only job that you have is to continue to heed your heart's calling. There's nothing more to do than follow that impulse. The follow your bliss, Joseph Campbell, it's true. You learn to follow the impulse of your heart. I call it now the somatic imperative, because in my process, and not everybody has this process, I feel it in my body, and my body speaks to me and helps me in a profound intuitive process that helps me heal my brain and body from the drug injury. But we all feel the heart's calling in different ways, and you need to learn what that is for you and simply begin the process of listening and following. And it's a process. The thing that I did early on was I just began to trust it implicitly, even though there were many false starts and, things that felt like mistakes. But mistakes, if you pay attention, are simply more information, more data. Um, so at first, the path may not be clear. It may be shrouded in darkness and fog, but if you continually feel the call of your heart and do whatever little step it suggests, it will lead you out of the dark and into your being. Right now, there are very few professionals that know how to assist in this process for those of us who have been gravely harmed and injured in various ways. The nature of the pain that we feel is overwhelming and scary to professionals, and they tend to want to shut it down and drug us. It's too hard for them to sit with us, to abide with our pain. It's extreme, and most people are afraid of it, and clearly we are too, and we want help. The thing is, as we learn to feel it deeply, we can become our own recognition as we tell each other that this is what is necessary. This is what I have learned to do for myself. I sit deeply with the pain that I feel, with the sensitivity, the capacity to feel the pain of all humanity and the chaos on the planet at this time, which is pretty extreme. I've learned to sit with it and allow it to forge me. In fact, it will heal me if I allow myself to feel it. So there are very few professionals who really understand how to do this. They may understand something about it, but when they're confronted with those of us with these extreme, painful conditions, those of us who perhaps had them early on, and those of us who got them once we took the drugs, which make the pain conditions much, much worse because it makes our nervous systems completely raw and chaotic. So the professionals, some of them exist, but it's unusual, and most of us don't find them once we're in this boat of extreme feelers, extreme sensitivity. Most of us can't find professionals that know how to help us. And that's just a fact. And so we have to deal with that reality. If we find professionals, fantastic. I certainly am not suggesting people shouldn't try to find professionals if that's what they feel called to do. And some of us are lucky enough to find people who actually know how to be with us and recognize us and help us. But it's not the norm. Those of us who are injured to this point generally don't find people who know how to do anything other than suppress and drug us because it freaks them out and they just don't know how to be with us. So what I want to suggest is we don't need to despair when we can't find someone, because there are those of us that are doing the work, and we can recognize each other through the internet, and we can recognize each other on the street. I mean, I find people everywhere now. The more you allow yourself to become and the more you allow yourself to feel, it actually starts being mirrored in your environment. And I am now meeting people everywhere. Sometimes just randomly, strangers in the grocery store, wherever. You have these moments of deep connection and recognition of one another. And anyway, I'm finding more and more people, and the more I do this work, of course, I put myself out there in a really big way. I suggest in any way that we can, we do that, because that's how we find one another. The bottom line is, we are in every human being, but most people are cut off from who they are. But if we dare to be who we are, every time it's comfortable, every time it feels even remotely safe, we start finding one another. So we find each other in everyone ultimately, but in the short run, we find each other in those of us that we can dare to be real with. So the more we dare to be real, the more we find one another. And for a while, sometimes the only safe place to be real is in our own house by ourselves, as we allow ourselves to feel deeply and process all the pain that we were unable to process because we were on drugs for so many years. Okay, well, I think I've said everything I want to say. The blog has lots and lots of information. The way we help ourselves is different for everyone, but it generally is a matter of dealing with our every facet of our lives, and I do it through diet and meditation and exercise and mindfulness in every moment, 24/7. But everybody finds their own way. I have my way documented, as well as some others that I have found interesting that I have shared on the website. On the top of the website, there's a drop-down menu. If you go at the top, and you can get ideas, but that's all it's for. It's ideas. My path is not your path. We're all different, and so may you find your path, and may you thrive. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.